Thank you for attending the 1095C 2016 Data Gathering Spreadsheet webinar, hosted by me, Benjamin Davis. Diversified Administration is pleased to announce the release of our data gathering spreadsheets for the 2016 calendar year's ACA reporting. Thanks to some IRS guidance which clarified certain things, as well as invaluable experience we've gained preparing the 1094 and 1095C forms for the 2015 filings, we've been able to greatly simplify the data gathering spreadsheets. This will make it much easier for you to enter the information and much easier for us to review it for accuracy. To ensure we're able to process your data in an efficient manner, be sure to complete the employer information at the top. Please be sure to list 2 contacts, so even if someone's out of the office on a particular day, we're still able to get in touch with someone who will be able to assist us and answer any questions we may have. In this example, I've listed myself, Benjamin Davis, as well as my assistant Sandro Vivas, as the contacts for questions related to the Diversified Administration spreadsheet. I've listed data for a number of people, each representing different situations your employees are likely to face. A vast majority of your employees are likely to fit into a scenario similar to the first 4 or 5 examples. However, we've included examples of some less common situations, so you know how to enter data for those employees as well. The first column, labeled Notes, gives you a place to provide us with additional information you think may be important for us to know. As we go through the scenarios for various sample employees, you'll see a number of ways this field can be used. Columns B through K are your basic demographic information, such as employee social security number, name, and address. Columns L and M are for the hire and termination dates, respectively. Columns N through R are for information related to the offers of insurance coverage. Almost all of your employees' information will be in these groups of columns. If you have any employees who transfer from full-time to part-time, or vice versa, that can be entered into columns S, T, and U. If you rehired an employee who had been terminated earlier in the year, the information about their reemployment can be entered in columns V through Z. For employees who remained employed as full-time employees the entire time they were employed and who are not rehired after termination, columns S through Z will be blank. Now that we've taken a brief look at the various columns, I'm going to hide columns F through K, as those relate only to employee addresses, and hiding those will allow us to more easily look at some examples of how the spreadsheet will be completed for the employees. Bruce Wayne represents one of the easiest scenarios to fill out. He's worked for the company for quite some time, has been offered affordable insurance from the beginning of the year, and has remained both employed and insured throughout the year. Don Draper's situation is equally easy to enter. He's also worked for the company for quite some time, but has waived the affordable coverage we've offered him from the beginning of the year. He has remained employed while waiving coverage throughout the year. Archie Andrews also has a common situation which is quite easy to enter. He was recently hired back in November of 2015. Our plan documents state that we offer coverage on the first of the month following 60 days of full-time employment. So even though he was employed on January 1st, 2016, his waiting period didn't end until February 1st, at which time he elected the affordable coverage we offered to him. Wade Wilson is likely to represent some of your current and former employees as well. He's worked for the company for a few months and was insured from the beginning of the year, but he was terminated shortly thereafter. Our company's policy states that employees who were insured at the time they were terminated remain insured until the end of the month, so Wade's coverage ends January 31st. Logan Howlett's situation is similar to Wade's. He's worked for us for quite a while, but he waived coverage since the beginning of the year and continued to waive coverage at our open enrollment. He left our company on February 19th. Because companies are not required to continue to offer coverage to terminated employees who had waived coverage, the date his coverage offer ended is the same as his date of termination, February 19th. It's important to remember, employees who were insured when they terminated have the date their coverage offer ended set to the end of the month, while terminated employees who had waived coverage have their date of coverage offer end date set to the date of their termination. Clark Kent was recently hired on March 5th. Because we don't offer insurance coverage to employees until the first of the month following 60 days of full-time employment, we haven't yet offered him coverage. If he's still employed, an offer of coverage will be made on June 1st, at which time he can either take or waive coverage. At that time, I can enter his information into the spreadsheet. If he terminates in the interim, I'll just put that no offer was made with an initial coverage date equal to his date of hire. Peter Parker's situation is less common, but is still likely to occur a small number of times in some companies. He's been working with us a few months and had initially waived coverage. However, he elected the coverage we offered at open enrollment on February 1st. Jughead Jones's situation is also likely to happen a small number of times in some companies. He's worked for us for quite some time and was insured from the beginning of the year. He also remained insured at open enrollment, but he got married in February, and because of this qualifying event, he went on the insurance offered by his wife's company on March 1st. Because he is still employed, an offer of coverage is still being offered even though he's waiving it, so the date the coverage offer ended will remain blank. Charles Xavier's situation is similar to both Wade Wilson's and Peter Parker's. Like Peter, Charles Xavier initially waived coverage, but became covered on February 1st at our open enrollment. He then terminated on March 16th, and his coverage ran through the end of the month. The next group of situations are all much less common, but they do arise from time to time and wanted to make sure they were included here. The ACA mandates that employers have to offer coverage to 98% of all eligible employees. Geraldine Grundy is a good worker, but has a terrible attitude. So while we didn't want to fire her, we didn't want to offer her insurance coverage either. Since we offer it to all of the other eligible employees, we're still complying with the ACA mandate to offer 98% of eligible employees coverage. Since she was not offered coverage, we've put not offered in both columns N and O, and listed her date of hire, February 8th. Stephen Rogers had been working for us as a part-time employee for quite some time, but in the middle of February, he became a full-time employee. We offered him insurance on March 1st, which he took. However, we don't pay him that much, and the employee's contribution towards the employee-only portion of the lowest cost plan we offer is more than 9.56% of his salary. So according to the IRS, the coverage we've offered him is unaffordable. The next two employees, Tony Stark and Robert Bruce Banner, had both been full-time employees, but had their hours reduced to the point where they are now classified as part-time employees. Because our insurance coverage is only offered to full-time employees, this reduction in hours counted as a qualifying event that made them both eligible for COBRA coverage. Tony Stark waived his offer of COBRA coverage, while Robert Banner elected to remain insured through COBRA. It is important to note that guidance issued by the IRS last year states that it is not necessary to report whether those who terminated employment while insured elect or waive COBRA coverage. It's only necessary to report the COBRA status for current employees who became eligible for COBRA because of a reduction in hours. The remaining situations are not very common, but they're not unheard of, so we'll use those as our last four examples. Charlie Brown had worked for us for quite some time and was insured at the beginning of the year. However, he terminated in early January. Because of how our plan documents are written, he remained covered until the end of January. About 2 months later, we'd gotten a call from him asking for his old job back. Because we couldn't find anyone qualified to fill his spot in the meantime, we did rehire him. Because he's still currently in his waiting period, we have not yet offered him coverage again. If he's still employed in June, when his waiting period will have ended, we can then fill out columns X and Y, indicating whether he elected or waived the insurance coverage. Diana Prince's situation is similar to that of Charlie Brown's. She'd worked with us for a while and was insured from the beginning of the year and let go in early January. She remained covered until the end of January. We rehired her in early February, and she became insured on May 1st after her waiting period ended. It seemed like rehiring her was a bad decision because she was let go on May 15th, and her coverage again ended at the end of May. Our company has two EINs that are part of the same controlled group. In ACA parlance, we have two EINs that are both members of the same ALE, or Aggregate Large Employer. Each member, or EIN, will complete its own spreadsheet, and employees who have worked for one or more ALE members will receive a 1095-C from each company. Veronica Lodge worked with us for a while, and her last day was February 5th. That's when she transferred to another EIN of our company. Her coverage continued under this employer's plan until the end of the month. From then on, she would show on the spreadsheet of the other employer. When an employee transfers from one ALE member to another, it's important to put this in the notes column. We can see why this is the case when we look at Betty Cooper's information. We can see from the notes column that she moved to our company from another ALE member on February 5th, but because she remained with our company, there was no waiting period, and her coverage began on March 1st, the day after her coverage would have ended under the previous ALE member's plan. Hopefully the above examples explain how to enter the most common situations your employees are likely to encounter, as well as some of the less common situations. To get this process started, we ask that you please begin entering the data for the first quarter of 2016 and send it over to us to review. As business in today's world is quite complex, it's possible that you'll face a situation we did not account for in this video. If you have such an employee, please give me or Sandra a call and we'll work with you to determine the best way to enter that employee's information into the spreadsheet. It's also worth noting that the IRS changed the filing guidelines a number of times in 2015, and we believe it's likely they'll change the filing instructions in this year at least once and possibly more. In closing, we'd like to thank you for your continued business and look forward to making this year's filing as painless as an IRS filing can possibly be.